Well, hello. I am Nixel, and I wanted to talk about something pretty general. Hobbies. Hobbies are interesting. They can become a way of life, or simply something you enjoy doing on a day off. But what if you had a hobby which defined you for a really long time, let's say over a decade, and then you slowly began realizing it now no longer interests you as a passion as it once did? So, I had an idea for a video. I wanted to reflect on my time in World of Warcraft, from the beginning till what for now is an end. It may or may not interest you, but more importantly, it interests me, so let us begin from the start. When I began my journey in WoW, I was around 15 years old. I had been just ostracized from my usual social circles. I won't go into too much detail on that, but it was a huge hit to my mental and emotional being. Now we can move on to gaming. My parents bought me the game, and I began my slow journey in Azeroth. Now, when did I actually start playing? I went to check my account, but apparently they stopped keeping hold of subscription info from before 2015. So I went and asked for my Blizzard data, which you are legally allowed to do, and did some digging. It turns out I started on February 17th, 2007, and now consider it ending at around December 2020. You can do the math if you want to. It's roughly 14 years. I don't personally think the accuracy here is too relevant. I wasn't awfully familiar with the game from the Warcraft days. I had seen many ads and videos on the internet about it, so I had been wanting to play it. I began by making a character on some server. I recall it being a dwarf hunter. And I started questing. The next day, I abandoned that hunter and the server and went to look at some other servers. Now, my mindset at the time was I wanted to start the right way. I had understood the concept of server dividing players, and I put a lot of emphasis on it. I wanted to start on a server which had people on it that were active, as I was in a lonely place at the time. So I did this for what I figure was a few days, going on different servers, seeing how active it was, asking trade chat and people what they thought of the server, and making assumptions based on that. Then finally, I landed on the server I would eventually stick to for over a decade. On one server, I found two people dueling outside of Stormwind from the same guild. I waited for them to end their duel out of courtesy, and then started asking them about the server. One thing led to another, and I friended one of the people. I now had a new goal, level to 25, which was their entry requirement, and join their guild. Now, I think this was a major turning point, to be honest. If I had not gotten any response out of these two people, I would have more than likely just moved on to look for another server. They spend maybe 5 to 10 minutes out of their time, and in return, I spend a decade on the server. I spend most if not all of my free time in WoW from there on out. I got to level 25 and managed to join their guild. I don't remember much of the leveling process though, or how I interacted with the guild. I recall them being helpful and chatty, but as they were ahead of me in the curve, they talked about content ahead of me, which I didn't understand a lot of. It took me a long time to reach Outlands as a paladin. I played mostly as ret, but swapped to protection every so often to give it a go, as I had seen Hobbs' videos about paladin AoE grinding. Those videos would later on inspire me to do something I would regret, which is become a prot paladin at level 70. I was too young and impatient to try something considered quirky like that at the time. I spent a week before rage quitting the spec, and went wholly by PvPing and doing normal dungeons. By some quirk of fate, I managed to get into the guild's raid team as they continued clearing Karazhan. The caveat being I could only raid 2 hours a night, as I was a teenager with a bedtime. However, there happened to be another healer who could only log on around the same time as I had to log off, which was a weird coincidence at the time. I cherished those 2 hours. The pleasure I got from being part of a group of people killing internet monsters was a real huge contrast to how I didn't feel success in real life at the time. I wanted to improve. I wanted to be a good and meaningful part of the group, so I studied tactics to a point where I could remember most boss fights by heart. And my efforts were rewarded after one raid into Tempest Keep, our first kill of Alar, the Phoenix. I spent a lot of effort making sure the fight mechanics went well. While healing, I taunted ads, got their aggro and moved them to the ad tank. You could say I had no business going that far to make us succeed, but what can I say? I'm selfish and no one else was doing it. Also, Alar at the time in my eyes was a boss which most guilds ignored as it didn't drop anything nice, was comparatively much more difficult than its alternatives outside of Kael'thas himself, so killing the bird was pretty major for me. I may not remember the wording correctly, but I doubt I'll ever forget the moment. In the guild chat, one of the officers congratulated the raid team on this hard endeavor, but it wasn't just that. They mentioned me by name. You've gone above and beyond for the raid team tonight, and you've always done your best. Without you, I don't think we would have killed the boss today. Your effort hasn't gone unnoticed, and we're lucky to have you. I was recognized, and I no longer saw myself as just another body in the raid, which meant the world to me. It really did. I'm confident I cried or became teary at that moment. Each raid, I became a bigger part of preparing tactics. Each raid, my confidence as a WoW player grew. If no one is going to take this burden in a fight, then I will. I found nothing more annoying than when a boss didn't die because the group didn't have an understanding of when to do something, like move. So I became a go-to for essentially playing the role of DPM, but vocally. I could hold a conversation through writing, but vocally I had little confidence in more than a few blurts, so that's all I could manage till later on. It wasn't all good though. During that time I still suffered through depression and everything that brings. Raiding and talking were the few things that kept me in check with myself. I even had a period where I would log on and stand in a city only to make snarky or even mean comments towards people who wrote in the chat. I imagine that was a way for me to feel good, like a bully. I do hope it didn't last too long. Moving on, since I can't remember much of it. To wrap up the Burning Crusade, we raided, cleared everything before Black Temple, then we killed Illidan. We didn't do much in Sunwell. It's a shame, but we simply weren't good enough. Now actually imagine making a friend out of all of that. I somehow managed to fool a person into being my friend. Let's call him Edward from Twilight. I honestly can't remember how it happened originally, yet I managed to make a friend I looked forward to having a chat with every day, meeting in-game, doing random shit like playing PvP in WoW, or even outside of WoW, even to this day. So that was the Burning Crusade. It was an interesting time, and definitely much more simpler than what WoW has become over time, which is probably why a lot of people prefer or appreciate it to this day. For me, it was character defining. I could talk with people and be part of a group without feeling out of place, as the people around me held similar interests that I did, unlike in real life. And I think that's the best thing about all of it, in hindsight. Just interacting with people was important, but I feel I also conditioned myself to become a raider so people would appreciate me more. Is that healthy? Probably not, but it happened. Either way, thank you for watching or listening to me ramble about WoW. I've made a script/list of pretty much everything I remember from WoW, so I'll be doing the next expansions as well. Be on the lookout by subscribing. I'd appreciate a like or dislike as well. Either works.